My friends, have you ever noticed that sometimes, just when you think everything is falling apart, something unexpected happens, and suddenly you realize it was all falling into place? You may be tired, you may be praying for something that seems delayed. But remember this: when God is silent, He's not absent. When you can't see His plan, He's still writing your story. And perhaps your breakthrough, your miracle, your moment of divine surprise is already on its way. You just haven't unwrapped it yet. Pause, smile, look around. You see, life has a funny way of testing our patience right before the blessing arrives. Sometimes, God hides His greatest gifts behind the door of waiting, behind the disguise of difficulty, behind the lessons we don't yet understand. But when the time is right, when your heart is ready, God will surprise you very soon. I remember meeting a young man once who was broken, jobless, and heartbroken all at once. He told me, "Sir, I have prayed, but nothing happens. Maybe God has forgotten me." I smiled and said, "No, my friend, God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing you. The same way a farmer waits for the right season before harvesting, God is waiting for the right moment to reveal His plan for you." And a few months later, that same man called me. His voice was full of joy. He said, "Sir, I just got a job that I never even applied for. It came to me." I told him, "That wasn't luck. That was your surprise from God." So today, if you are waiting, struggling, or feeling lost, don't lose heart. God is not finished with you. Your story hasn't ended, it's just turning a silent page. The same God who brought light after your darkest night is preparing something for you beyond what you can imagine. You don't have to chase miracles. They will find you when your heart is aligned with faith. You see, in life we often become restless when things don't happen according to our timeline. We plan, we expect, and we set deadlines for our dreams as if the entire universe is bound by our schedule. But God's clock doesn't tick the way ours does. His timing is never too early and never too late. It's always perfect. Yet, when we are in the waiting season, it's hard to see that perfection. We feel forgotten, anxious, and uncertain, asking ourselves, why isn't anything happening yet? But the truth is, something is happening, just not in the way you can see. The invisible hand of God is aligning situations, molding hearts, and preparing the path that will lead you exactly where you need to be at exactly the right moment. Think about a seed buried beneath the soil. When you look at the ground, it seems as if nothing is happening. Days pass, then weeks, sometimes months, and there's still no visible sign of growth. You might be tempted to dig it up to see if it's growing, but if you do, you'll destroy its process. The seed doesn't bloom the day it's planted. It blooms when it's ready. Likewise, your life is a divine seed, and God knows the season of your bloom. You can't rush the sunrise, and you can't hurry divine timing. You can only trust that it's coming. In our impatience, we sometimes compare our timelines to others. We see our friends achieving their goals, buying their homes, getting married, finding success, and we start to wonder if we've been left behind. But just because someone else's season has arrived doesn't mean yours has expired. Imagine two people planting two different trees. One plants a sunflower, the other a mango tree. The sunflower sprouts within weeks, standing tall and proud. The mango tree, however, takes years to bear fruit. But when it does, its fruit lasts, nourishes, and gives shade for generations. God may be growing something deeper and greater in you, and that's why it's taking longer. Many times, the waiting period feels like punishment, but it's actually preparation. Maybe you're praying for a certain job, but if God gave it to you now, you might not have the emotional strength or wisdom to handle it. Maybe you want a relationship, but you still need to heal from your past. Maybe you're asking for success, but if it came too soon, your ego might destroy it. So, God waits, not because He's cruel, but because He's kind. He's ensuring that when the blessing comes, you're ready to receive it and sustain it. Timing isn't just about the event, it's about the readiness of the person. Let's take a simple example from daily life. Imagine baking a cake. You mix all the right ingredients, put it in the oven, and wait. You can't keep opening the oven door every minute thinking, is it done yet? If you do, you'll ruin the cake. The right temperature, the right duration, and the right patience are all needed for it to rise perfectly. Life is the same. God knows the temperature of your trials and the duration of your waiting. When the time is right, the aroma of His plan will fill your life, and you'll see why you had to wait so long. There are moments in life when things suddenly click. When an unexpected phone call, a chance meeting, or a random event opens a new door. We call it coincidence, but it's not. It's divine coordination. Those are the moments when you realize God was never late. He was preparing everything behind the scenes. Every no you faced was protecting you from the wrong door. Every delay was saving you from premature success. Every disappointment was redirecting you to something more meaningful. Even in the darkest seasons, remember that time is not wasted. It's like the pause between two musical notes, necessary for the melody to make sense. The pause is not silence, it's sacred space where growth happens unseen. The caterpillar doesn't complain inside the cocoon. Even though it's dark and tight, it just trusts the process. Because if it tried to break out before time, it would never fly. That's how God works. You may feel like you're stuck, but you're really being transformed. Sometimes, God delays things so that you can learn patience, faith, and humility, the qualities that will sustain you when the blessing comes. Without patience, success becomes pride. Without faith, blessings lose meaning. Without humility, achievements become hollow. So, He teaches you to wait, not to break you, but to make you. And when His timing finally unfolds, it happens so smoothly, so beautifully, that you'll forget all the waiting pain. You'll say, "Now I understand why it took so long." You'll see how every detour, every closed door, and every delay was part of the divine choreography, leading you exactly where you needed to be. God's timing doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes you. So, the next time you feel frustrated because things aren't happening fast enough, take a deep breath and remind yourself, the seed doesn't doubt the season. The night doesn't question the dawn. Everything unfolds exactly when it's meant to. God is not in a hurry because He already sees the end from the beginning. You don't need to rush what eternity has already planned. When it finally happens, that long-awaited call, that opportunity, that healing, that moment of joy, it will come with such peace and perfection that you'll know without a doubt that only God could have arranged it. And you'll smile, perhaps with tears in your eyes, whispering to yourself, yes, His timing was perfect after all. There are moments in life when we pour our hearts out to God, asking for something we deeply desire, and yet it doesn't come. We pray, we plan, we persist, and still doors remain closed. At such times, the mind whispers, maybe it's not meant for me, or worse, maybe God doesn't care. But that's when we must remember a sacred truth. Delay is not denial. When God makes you wait, it doesn't mean He has rejected your prayer. It means He's preparing the perfect answer. The delay is not a pause of neglect, it's a period of alignment, growth, and unseen orchestration. It's like the interval between sowing a seed and seeing the flower bloom. Invisible progress that requires trust, not panic. Imagine a child asking their parent for a sharp knife. The parent, out of love, refuses. To the child, it looks like unfairness, maybe even punishment. But to the parent, it's protection. God's delays are like that. He withholds things not because He doesn't want you to have them, but because He wants you to have them safely, at the right time, and in the right way. What we interpret as no is often a divine not yet. We only see the single puzzle piece in front of us, while God sees the whole picture. Life teaches us this lesson repeatedly, often through disappointment. There are people who wanted a certain job and didn't get it, only to later discover that the company closed down. Some people cried over relationships that ended, only to meet someone years later who truly understood them. Some faced rejections that shattered them, only to realize later that those rejections redirected them towards something much greater. When we look back, we often thank God for the prayers He didn't answer the way we wanted. Because if He had, we might have settled for less than what He had planned for us. In everyday life, think of how we prepare a meal. You can't serve half-cooked food just because you're hungry. It might fill the stomach, but won't nourish the body. In the same way, God doesn't serve your blessings half-prepared. He wants them to be seasoned with wisdom, cooked in patience, and served at the temperature of readiness. If you receive something too early, it could harm you. Many people dream of success, but aren't yet emotionally mature to handle it. Some desire love, but haven't yet healed from old wounds. Some ask for prosperity without yet learning gratitude. So, God delays, not to frustrate you, but to form you. Sometimes the delay is not just about the blessing, it's about the person you're becoming in the process. During the wait, you learn humility, you learn resilience, you discover how to trust even when you can't see the outcome. You develop the strength to stand alone, the wisdom to discern people, and the grace to appreciate what you once took for granted. The delay shapes you because what's coming requires a stronger, wiser version of you. And if you rush it, you'll miss the depth that only waiting can build. There's a powerful story of a young artist who kept sending his work to galleries, but faced rejection after rejection. He almost gave up, thinking maybe he wasn't good enough. But instead of quitting, he decided to keep refining his art. Years later, one of those galleries that once rejected him reached out to invite him for an exhibition. That single event changed his entire career. When asked later how he felt about all those rejections, he smiled and said, "If they had accepted me back then, I wouldn't have grown into the artist I am today." Sometimes God delays because He's polishing your talent, your character, and your heart so you can handle the platform He's preparing. In the waiting period, our patience is tested, and so is our faith. The human mind wants control, but faith asks for surrender. It's easy to trust when things happen instantly. It's divine to trust when they don't. Waiting is not wasted time when your heart remains faithful. The truth is, you may not always get what you want when you want it, but if you remain grounded in faith, you will always get what you need, and often much more than you imagined. Have you ever noticed how the most beautiful sunrises come after the longest nights? It's the same with divine timing. You may be walking through a long season of uncertainty, but one morning, without any grand announcement, everything will shift. That's how God works, quietly, gently, perfectly. You'll look back and realize that the waiting wasn't an interruption to your life, it was preparation for it. Every tear, every unanswered prayer, every delay was part of the masterpiece He was painting with your journey. So, if you are in a season of waiting right now, don't mistake it for abandonment. Don't think that the silence means denial. You are still in His plan, even when it feels slow. The flower doesn't bloom the day it's planted. The stars don't shine until it's dark. And your miracle won't come until you're truly ready to receive it. Hold on, because delay is not denial. It's the universe rearranging things in your favor. It's God ensuring that when the door opens, you'll have the strength to walk through it with confidence, gratitude, and grace. And when that long-awaited moment finally arrives, you'll smile through tears, realizing that the waiting was never wasted. It was sacred. It was the season that made you wiser, deeper, and more connected to the divine rhythm of life. And you'll whisper to yourself, "No, I understand. The delay was not denial. It was destiny unfolding in disguise." There are times in life when you pray and the heavens seem quiet. You call out to God, but there's no answer, no sign, no direction. The silence can feel unbearable. It's as if your prayers have hit a wall and returned unheard. But that silence does not mean God has turned away. It means He's working in ways that are beyond your sight. Silence is not absence. It is preparation. It is the sacred space where faith is tested, purified, and made stronger. The moments when you can't hear God's voice are the moments when you are invited to trust His heart. We often expect God to respond instantly. A clear signal, a sudden change, an obvious miracle. But divine communication doesn't always come in the form of loud instructions or dramatic signs. Sometimes it comes in the quiet shaping of your heart, in the calm that follows a storm, or in the patience you develop while waiting. The silence of God is not a punishment, it's an invitation to go deeper within yourself and discover how much faith you truly carry when you can't see the path ahead. Think of a teacher during an exam. When the test begins, the teacher doesn't speak. Not because they have abandoned the students, but because it's time for them to apply what they've already learned. God works the same way. When He's silent, He's watching your response. He's seeing whether you panic or persevere, whether you crumble or continue, whether you trust or give up. The silence is the test before the testimony. It's in that silence that your faith graduates from theory to reality. In daily life, we can relate this to the experience of waiting for a message from someone we care about. When they don't respond, our mind immediately creates stories. Maybe they don't care, maybe something went wrong, maybe it's over. But most of the time, they're simply busy, or they're preparing something for you that you can't see yet. Similarly, when God is silent, He's not ignoring you, He's arranging circumstances behind the scenes. The same way a seed germinates silently beneath the soil, God's work in your life often happens in silence. Growth is not always noisy. Think of a caterpillar inside its cocoon. There's no sound, no movement visible to the outside world. But inside, transformation is taking place. The silence of that cocoon is not emptiness, it's creation. When it finally breaks free, the world witnesses beauty. But no one sees the silent struggle that made those wings possible. When your life feels silent, remember that you're in your cocoon season. Something within you is being reshaped for flight. Many of us panic when silence stretches too long. We think we've lost our connection with the divine. But what if that silence is God's way of building your inner compass? Faith isn't believing when everything makes sense. It's believing when nothing does. It's walking through the fog and still knowing that the road continues even when you can't see it. True faith doesn't demand answers. It trusts the process. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you're driving at night on a dark road. Your headlights don't show you the entire route. They only reveal a few meters ahead. But as you keep moving, the next few meters become visible. That's how God's guidance works during silence. You may not see the whole journey, but if you keep driving with trust, one step at a time, He will keep showing you the next stretch of light. The silence between those moments of guidance isn't a void. It's an opportunity for trust to grow stronger. There are also moments when God's silence protects us. Sometimes, if He showed us everything that's ahead, we'd be too afraid to move forward. Sometimes, if He gave us all the answers too soon, we'd stop growing. His silence forces us to build resilience, to rely on faith rather than constant confirmation. Imagine a parent teaching a child to walk. At first, the parent holds their hand tightly, guiding each step. But then, the parent lets go for a moment. The child wobbles, uncertain, afraid. But in that moment of letting go, something magical happens. The child learns to balance. God's silence is that moment. He lets go, not to make you fall, but to help you find your balance in faith. When you look back later in life, you'll realize that those silent seasons were never empty. They were filled with invisible miracles. The moments you cried, thinking no one was listening, were the moments He was closest to you. The nights you felt lost were the nights He was lighting a new path for your growth. Silence is often the bridge between prayer and manifestation. It's the sacred interval where your heart and destiny come into alignment. There will be times when you'll wonder if you're on the right path. You may question your choices, your strength, and even your faith. But remember, every great soul has walked through this valley of silence. Even the ocean looks still from afar, but beneath that calm surface lies a world of movement. The same is true for your life. Even when everything feels motionless, something divine is shifting beneath the surface. So, when you can't hear God, don't assume He's gone. Instead, whisper to yourself, He's working in silence. Keep doing what you can with faith. Keep walking, even when the path looks unclear. Keep believing, even when there's no evidence to support your hope. Because soon the silence will break, the door will open, the answer will arrive, and you'll understand why God had to be quiet. Because He was preparing something so profound that words couldn't describe it. When that moment comes, you'll smile and say, "Now I understand." The silence wasn't rejection, it was refinement. God wasn't ignoring me, He was strengthening me. And in that realization, you'll find peace. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on hearing His voice, but on knowing His presence never left, not even for a single heartbeat. There are moments in life when everything seems to be falling apart, when pain, failure, and uncertainty feel like punishment. We look up and ask, "Why me? What did I do wrong?" But what if what you are going through is not punishment at all, but preparation? What if the storms in your life are not meant to destroy you, but to strengthen you? Sometimes God takes you through fire not to burn you, but to refine you. He removes things not to hurt you, but to make space for something greater. Every challenge is a classroom where your soul learns lessons that comfort can never teach. You are not being punished. You are being prepared for something extraordinary that your present self may not yet understand. When a sculptor begins to work with a block of marble, he doesn't see a stone, he sees a statue hidden inside it. But to reveal that statue, he must chisel, hammer, and carve away the parts that don't belong. From the marble's perspective, the process is painful. Each strike feels like destruction. But the sculptor knows what he's doing. Every cut has purpose. Every blow reveals beauty. Similarly, God is the sculptor of your soul. The challenges you face, the heartbreaks you endure, the losses you experience, they are the chisels that shape you into who you are meant to become. Without them, the masterpiece inside you would remain hidden forever. Think about a seed again. Before it grows, it must be buried in darkness. If the seed could speak, it might say, "Why am I being covered? Why am I surrounded by dirt?" But that darkness is not a grave. It's a womb. It's not the end of its life. It's the beginning of a transformation. In that same way, when God buries you in difficulty, He's not ending your story. He's planting you for growth. What looks like an ending is often the preparation for your greatest beginning. In our daily lives, we can see this truth reflected everywhere. Imagine someone who loses their job unexpectedly. At first, it feels like rejection. The mind fills with fear and doubt. But months later, that same person might find themselves in a new opportunity that fits their purpose perfectly. One they would never have discovered if they hadn't been pushed out of the old one. What looked like punishment was, in reality, redirection. God had to close one door to guide them toward another. Sometimes, blessings don't come gift wrapped, they come disguised as challenges. We often want growth without discomfort, strength without struggle, clarity without confusion. But life doesn't work that way. Just as muscles grow only when they are stretched and challenged, your inner strength grows through resistance. Without the weight of experience, there can be no endurance. Without trials, there can be no triumph. When you face difficulties, it's easy to think you're being punished, but perhaps you are simply being trained. The delay, the disappointment, the detour, they are your training ground. Think about a pilot before flying a plane. They go through countless hours of training in a simulator. They experience turbulence, emergencies, and failures in a controlled environment to prepare them for the real skies. Similarly, God often allows turbulence in your life before giving you higher altitudes to fly. He tests your patience, your faith, and your courage, not because He doubts you, but because He's preparing you to handle the blessings that require a stronger version of you. Even in small things, we can see this. When you want to boil water, you must expose it to fire. Only when it reaches the right temperature does it transform into vapor and rise. The fire doesn't destroy the water, it elevates it. In the same way, your struggles are the heat that causes your soul to rise. Without the fire, you would remain still. Without challenges, you would never discover how much potential you truly have. Sometimes the preparation feels lonely. You may see others moving ahead, celebrating victories, while you're still waiting for your breakthrough. But remember, even the most beautiful sunrise begins in the darkest hour. The silence, the isolation, the waiting, all are tools of preparation. You are being strengthened quietly, just like a tree that grows deep roots underground before it reaches for the sky. The deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. The deeper your preparation, the higher your destiny. Every great person you admire has been through seasons of struggle. They were shaped in private long before they were celebrated in public. Life's most valuable lessons are not taught in comfort, they are learned in the fire. If you look closely, you'll realize that every setback you faced has taught you something essential: compassion, patience, resilience, wisdom. Nothing was wasted. Every tear, every disappointment, every challenge carried meaning. You were being molded for something your old self couldn't yet handle. And when the time is right, you'll look back and understand that what once felt like punishment was actually God's mercy. He didn't remove you from difficulty because that difficulty was creating depth within you. He didn't answer your prayer immediately because He was building you into the person who could sustain the blessing when it came. The pain you felt was not rejection, it was transformation. So, the next time you face hardship, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask instead, "What is this teaching me?" You are not being broken, you are being built. You are not being buried, you are being planted. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. Trust the process even when it's painful. The very situations that make you question God are often the ones through which He's preparing your miracle. And one day, when you stand stronger, wiser, and more peaceful, you'll smile and say, "Now I see why it had to happen this way. God wasn't punishing me, He was preparing me for the life I was meant to live." Sometimes, what looks like a setback is actually a setup. What appears as a loss may be the very path to your greatest gain. In the journey of life, blessings rarely come in the form we expect. They often arrive disguised as disappointments, detours, or even disasters. But as time unfolds, you begin to realize that every painful moment had a purpose. Every unanswered prayer was a divine redirection. Every heartbreak was a hidden blessing. What feels like a curse today might be the very thing that leads you toward your highest destiny tomorrow. God's blessings don't always look like blessings at first. Sometimes they come wearing the mask of hardship, but underneath, they carry your transformation. Think about rain for a moment. When it pours, people rush for shelter. They complain about the wetness, the inconvenience, the darkness. Yet that same rain nourishes the soil, revives the plants, and fills the rivers. Without the storm, there would be no harvest. Life works the same way. The storms that trouble you today might be watering the seeds of blessings that will bloom later. Just because you can't see the flowers yet doesn't mean they're not growing beneath the surface. Every drop of difficulty carries the potential of future growth. We often measure blessings by comfort. If life is smooth, we think we're blessed. If it's rough, we assume something's wrong. But the truth is, some of the biggest blessings come from the hardest seasons. A person who lost their job might discover their true calling. Someone whose relationship ended might find their self-worth again. A failure that breaks your pride might make space for humility and wisdom. The blessing is not in what you lost, it's in what you learned. Pain has a way of polishing the soul like fire refines gold. Imagine a person stuck in traffic, frustrated and late for an appointment. They grumble and curse their luck, only to later find out that if they had been on time, they would have been in the middle of an accident that happened on that same route. What looked like an inconvenience was actually protection. Sometimes God's blessings are not in what He gives, but in what He prevents. You might be praying for something you think you need, while God knows it would hurt you. So He closes that door, and you call it rejection. But in truth, it's redirection, a detour that leads you somewhere safer, wiser, and better aligned with your purpose. Life gives us countless such examples. There are times when we meet people who seem perfect, only to realize later that they were not meant for us. At first, the heartbreak feels unbearable, but when we look back, we understand that person was not part of the long-term plan. Sometimes God removes people, opportunities, or comforts not to harm us, but to make space for what's meant for us. If your hands are full of the wrong things, how will you hold the right ones? That's why He takes away certain things, not out of cruelty, but out of compassion. In our daily lives, we all face moments that make us question, why is this happening to me? But often, what we call misfortune is life's way of cleaning our path. Picture a gardener pruning a tree. To the tree, it feels like loss. Branches are being cut, leaves are falling, the shape is changing. But the gardener knows that trimming those branches will allow the tree to grow stronger and bear more fruit. Similarly, when God prunes your life, it's not to reduce you, but to prepare you for new growth. The pain of loss is the soil of expansion. There's a story of a woman who once missed her flight and was furious. She had an important meeting to attend and she blamed herself, fate, and even God. But later she found out that the same flight she missed had crashed. That day, she realized the depth of unseen grace. You see, blessings don't always announce themselves with applause. Sometimes they hide behind delays, heartbreaks, and detours. What saves you can sometimes disguise itself as what stops you. The mind naturally resists pain, but the soul understands its purpose. Every hardship you've gone through has changed something inside you. A little more empathy, a little more patience, a little more strength. The pain you survived became the power that carries you forward. You might not have seen it in the moment, but now, looking back, you know you grew because of it. God's disguised blessings are often revealed only in hindsight. When you stand on the other side of your storm, you see the beauty of everything that once broke you. When you realize that blessings can come wrapped in pain, you stop fighting the process. You stop labeling moments as good or bad and start seeing them as necessary. The friend who betrayed you taught you discernment. The failure that humbled you taught you endurance. The waiting period that tested you taught you patience. Every experience, no matter how bitter, added a layer of wisdom to your soul. The pieces that felt like they were falling apart were actually falling into place. So, the next time life brings something unexpected, don't be too quick to judge it. What feels like rejection might be protection. What looks like delay might be direction. What hurts you today might heal you tomorrow. The divine plan is always bigger than your understanding. When you can't trace God's hand, trust His heart. And one day, you'll look back and smile at the moments that once made you cry. You'll say to yourself, now I understand. That pain was my blessing. That loss was my lesson. That struggle was my strength. Because the truth is, blessings are not always bright and shiny. Sometimes they come wrapped in disguise, hidden within the very challenges that once made you question everything. But when they unfold, you'll realize that God never took something from you without the intention of replacing it with something far better. Sometimes, God's surprises are hidden in what feels like the greatest silence of our lives. We pray, we wait, and we hope, but nothing seems to move. We begin to wonder, has God forgotten me? Yet it's in that silence, in that stillness where no doors seem to open, that the deepest preparation is happening. The sixth truth is this: before God surprises you, He strengthens you in silence. What feels like a pause is actually divine preparation. We humans are often in a hurry to see results, but God is more interested in developing our roots than displaying our fruits. A tree does not shoot upward until its roots have gone deep enough to sustain its height. The taller the tree, the deeper the roots. In the same way, before God allows your success to rise, He ensures your character can handle the height. Think about a farmer sowing seeds. After placing them into the soil, he cannot see what's happening beneath the surface. The land looks still, lifeless, almost empty. But deep inside, the seed is breaking open, transforming, and preparing to sprout. If the farmer digs it up too early out of impatience, he'll destroy what was growing quietly. The same applies to your journey. You may feel buried, forgotten, unseen, but you are actually planted. You're in the season where God is nurturing you away from the spotlight, strengthening your inner being so you can sustain the blessings when they come. Let's take an example from daily life. Imagine a young artist who paints tirelessly every day, yet no one buys her work. She questions her talent, wondering if she should give up. She compares herself to others who seem to succeed overnight. But little does she know, her persistence is crafting mastery. Her waiting is refining her vision. Her silence is building patience. When the right moment arrives, her art will not just catch eyes, it will touch hearts. God's surprises are like that. He takes His time because He's creating something timeless through you. If He rushed the process, you wouldn't be ready for the blessing when it came. Sometimes silence feels like rejection, but it's protection. You may be eager to step into something, a job, a relationship, a dream, but God holds you back because He knows what you can't yet see. You may think it's a delay, but it's divine redirection. Just like a navigation system recalculates when you take a wrong turn, God recalculates your path to align you with what's best for you. Every not yet is preparing a no that will arrive at the perfect moment. The waiting is never wasted. In fact, the waiting often becomes the very strength that sustains you later. Look at nature again. Every season serves a purpose. Winter may appear cold and lifeless, but it's the time when the earth rests, rejuvenates, and prepares for spring. The flowers you see blooming are not born in spring. They are born in winter. That's where their roots find strength. Likewise, the silence you're experiencing isn't a punishment, it's preparation. It's God teaching you patience, resilience, and humility, virtues that make your blessings last longer. Think of how many times you wanted something quickly and later realized you weren't ready for it then. Perhaps you wanted a certain opportunity, but if you had received it too soon, it would have overwhelmed you. God delays not to deny, but to prepare. He is not only working on your circumstances, He is also working on you. Sometimes He keeps the door closed until your heart has matured enough to walk through it gracefully. There's a story of a man who kept asking for a promotion at work, feeling frustrated that others got ahead of him. But he didn't realize that in that time, he was being prepared to lead with compassion, not pride. When his time finally came, he wasn't just promoted, he was transformed. The delay wasn't denial, it was divine development. God doesn't just want to give you blessings, He wants to make sure you can carry them with wisdom. So, when life feels silent and still, don't misinterpret it as absence. God is closer than ever in those moments. The silence is where your soul grows strong. It's the gym of your spirit, where unseen strength is built. A butterfly doesn't emerge without the struggle inside its cocoon. If someone tries to help it out early, it will never fly because it won't have the strength its struggle was meant to develop. Similarly, God allows you to wrestle in silence so that when your wings open, you can soar. Trust the process. even when you don't understand it. God hasn't forgotten you. He's fortifying you. The surprise is being prepared behind the scenes, and when it finally arrives, you'll realize why the silence was so necessary. You look back and thank the pauses, the delays, and even the disappointments because they were building the foundation for your breakthrough. In life, patience isn't waiting quietly, it's trusting deeply. It's saying, even if I can't hear him, I know he's here. Even if I can't see progress, I know he's working. Because when the silence ends and the surprise unfolds, it will not be small. It will be so beautiful, so perfectly timed, that you'll say, "No, I understand why it took so long." The silence was never empty. It was sacred space where your soul met God's timing. When life pushes you to your limits, when everything you dreamed of seems far beyond reach, remember this: God never leaves you empty. When He takes something away, it's because He's making room for something far greater. The seventh truth is this: every loss is not the end, it's an opening. The moments that seem to break you are often the moments when God is quietly rebuilding you. Sometimes He has to remove what you are clinging to, just so you can receive what you truly deserve. You see, if your hands are full of what's not meant for you, how can you receive what is? In daily life, we've all faced seasons where something was taken away, a relationship ended, a job slipped through our fingers, a plan failed. And in those moments, we felt like the world had stopped spinning. We questioned why. We cried, we prayed, we tried to understand. But over time, we realized that what felt like an ending was actually a redirection. God was not punishing us, He was protecting us. He knew that if that relationship had continued, we would have lost ourselves trying to make it work. If that job had stayed, we would have settled for less than our potential. If that plan had succeeded, we might have missed a greater purpose waiting ahead. Think of a potter working on clay. The clay must be pressed, stretched, and reshaped again and again. Each time it seems the potter destroys what he built, but in truth, he's refining it. He sees what the clay cannot, the final masterpiece. The clay only feels pressure, but the potter feels purpose. That's how God works in our lives. When something falls apart, it's not destruction, it's divine design. The pressure, the breaking, the shaping, it's all part of preparing you to hold something beautiful. Let's take a simple example. Imagine a woman who lost her job unexpectedly. She's heartbroken, anxious, and unsure of what's next. For months, she applies everywhere but hears nothing. She feels defeated. But then, out of nowhere, she gets an offer, not just a job, but an opportunity that aligns with her passion, her values, and her growth. That loss she once cursed becomes the very door through which her life expands. In hindsight, she realizes that God had to close one door to lead her to the right one. If she had stayed in her old comfort zone, she would have never discovered her true potential. Sometimes, God has to empty your hands so He can fill them with something new. It's like a gardener pruning a tree. When he cuts off branches, it looks painful. The tree appears wounded, but that pruning allows it to grow stronger and bear more fruit later. Without those cuts, the tree would remain weak. Similarly, God prunes our lives not to hurt us, but to help us grow. The people who left, the jobs that ended, the dreams that crumbled, they were all part of the pruning. Because what's meant for you will never be taken from you. If it left, it wasn't your destiny, it was your direction changing. We live in a world that tells us to cling tightly to everything: relationships, possessions, plans. But sometimes, letting go is the most powerful act of faith. When you release what's gone, you create space for what's coming. Holding on to something that's finished only delays your growth. The truth is, you cannot step into your next chapter if you keep rereading the last one. The universe responds to surrender. When you say, I trust, even through your tears, life begins to move again. Every loss comes with a hidden lesson. Maybe it's teaching you to rely on your inner strength. Maybe it's helping you rediscover your connection with God. Or maybe it's showing you that peace isn't found in what you hold, but in what you trust. You may not see the purpose now, but one day you look back and realize that the loss was the beginning of your breakthrough. What you thought was subtraction was actually preparation for multiplication. There's a story of a man who always dreamt of owning a business. He worked for years in a company, giving his best. One day, unexpectedly, he was laid off. His world crashed. But in that moment of loss, he decided to start his own small venture. It was hard at first. Failures, rejections, sleepless nights. Yet he kept moving, believing there was something bigger ahead. Years later, his business flourished, not just financially but spiritually. He became more fulfilled than he ever imagined. If he hadn't lost that job, he would have never stepped into his purpose. The loss was not rejection, it was redirection. Sometimes, God surprises us by taking away what we thought we needed, only to give us what we never imagined. It hurts at first because our human mind sees loss as defeat. But from a higher perspective, that loss was the key to unlocking your destiny. The very thing that broke you was the bridge that led you closer to your calling. So, if you're standing in the middle of something that feels like it's falling apart, don't lose heart. Trust that it's falling into place in ways you can't yet understand. The blessing is not only in what you gain, but in what you grow through. God's surprises often come wrapped in endings, but when the wrapping is removed, you'll see that the gift was always love, His love guiding you, protecting you, and preparing you. You may not have chosen the pain, but the pain is shaping you into someone who can handle greater joy. Every loss is a lesson in disguise. Every disappointment is a doorway to a better destiny. When you look back someday, you won't cry over what left. You'll smile because you'll see that God never took anything from you. He only replaced it with something that was always meant for you.